The Japanese House is responsible for dropping not only one of my favourite songs of 2019, but honestly one of my favourite songs of the 2010s overall, with You Seem So Happy. A song that I can't really explain why it is just so special to me, but that song is just such a tune, man. I feel like Japanese House tapped into something so excellent with that song, and it was just that good that I just felt like everything else from that album just couldn't quite live up to it, unfortunately. I don't know why, but that was just how I felt at the time. But that wasn't to say that I was just going to, totally ditch or ignore anything else that Japanese House was going to put out, because I think there's quite obviously talent there when you're going to drop a song that good, because, that's pretty impressive to do that. So of course I was keeping tabs to see what else Japanese House was going to drop, and here we are with a new album. In the end, it always does, in my opinion, is quite the improvement on previous works from the Japanese House, although I don't think it's an album that has a song as good or as brilliant as You Seem So Happy. I do think in terms of an overall consistent sound, the polish is really there, and it really comes together and feels really refined, and the direction of what she's going for as a songwriter, I think, is just more clear now, or clearer, I think is a better way to word it, because I think that the Japanese House has really come into her own. The emotional potency of these tracks is stronger, and I think the delivery is really earnest and really sweet and really delicate throughout this album as well. And I just feel like the melodies on a lot of these tracks really stand out, despite the fact that a lot of the time they're pretty soft and they're pretty low-key for the most part on this album. Where I knew I was going to be in for a good treat was the opening track, Spot Dog, which is just a real stunner. I feel like the beauty that she's tapping into on this song is quite striking, actually, and I think the power behind the vocals and what's going on instrumentally is just so beautiful and arranged so gorgeously. It honestly feels like I'm listening to something Masakatsu Takaki would do, who is truly a one-of-a-kind artist, and there is nobody else out there like Masakatsu. But anytime I'm hearing anything that sounds a little bit like Masakatsu, I am just taken aback immediately. And I would even say maybe a bit of Porter Robinson coming through on this track too, which makes a lot of sense, because Porter has said before that he's a huge Masakatsu fan and has, really, really influenced his works as well. So yeah, right out the gate, I'm already impressed with how lovely and warm the melodies are on this album. Touching Yourself is totally different though. It is way more of like an indie pop tune. The tune at large here is so well put together. It's so bloody catchy. Lyrically, it's a bit naughty. We won't get into all the details with the lyrics here, but overall, I'm just really, really bopping along to it. It's such a good tune. And then Sad to Breathe carries on the trend of catchy little indie pop tunes, reminding me a little bit more instrumentally of something like Tegan and Sara. So yeah, I'm liking the different sides to the Japanese House we're getting on this album. I mean, you get this really beautiful opener followed by two little catchy pop tunes immediately after. They're really good. Now, for the vast majority of the album, with tracks such as Over There, or the track featuring Muna, or other tracks later on too, you are getting this more softer, delicate approach, some pensive thoughts and interesting insightings into the Japanese House's mind on this album. You don't necessarily get these catchy indie pop upbeat tunes the whole way through, but really impressively, I'm not necessarily getting bored or finding it too samey, because I do feel like some of the tracks incorporate little elements here and there that just slightly differentiate themselves from track to track, which I do think is an impressive feat, because a lot of artists in this style that are doing music similar to this type of music at the moment do fall into a bit of a habit or a pattern of just kind of giving you the same thing over and over again on every track. But these tracks tend to have some really nice little electronic tinges coming through to add a bit of diversity, or maybe there'll be a bit more of like a piano focus, and then towards the end of the album, the last few tracks then incorporate a little bit more of like an acoustic guitar feel to them, which just ends up separating some of the feelings and the vibes that you're getting, which is really good. Friends brings back more of the upbeatness, so again, just kind of adding a little bit of flavour to the album here and there. I think lyrically this track is absolutely bizarre. I couldn't tell you what she was talking about here, but again, like Touching Yourself, there are some odd moments lyrically on this album where it really feels like Japanese House is just talking about things that, you know, maybe is she like watching her friends touch? I don't even know. Look, we'll leave it. We'll leave this. We'll forget it. But the melody is really nice, and instrumentally, it's way more out there and adventurous compared to some of the other tracks. So I do like how it sounds. And Sunshine Baby comes right before those like string of tracks that had a bit more of acoustic guitar feel, which I really like towards the end of the album. This track instrumentally is probably one of the most vibrant and detailed tracks. I mean, that like ending passage with like the horns coming through and stuff sounds really good. It really reminds me of something that came off of Jubilee by Japanese Breakfast, another Japanese counterpart, eh? But yeah, I wouldn't be surprised at all if the Japanese House was thinking of that album when making this track, because I wouldn't be surprised if a lot of these indie singer-songwriters looked to that album and thought, oh yeah, I really want to add a bit more character to my instrumentation. I really want to add a bit more of that flair, because that Japanese House album, Japanese Breakfast album is great. So it would not surprise me at all if indie artists were looking to that and thinking, oh yeah, I'd like to sound a little bit more like that. So yeah, I guess I'm just going to kind of wrap it up there, really. I feel like everything that you're getting from a lot of these tracks is a similar feel. I've kind of summed up the general vibes of these tracks as well. There's no point in diving into every single individual element of this album, because she is offering quite a similar thing across this album on many of these tracks. The little slight variations I am appreciating though. And I think the prettiness behind the instrumentation and how she's singing on this album is really lovely. Like, I'm pretty impressed with how it feels so low key, and yet I'm invested and I'm kept and I'm engaged for most of this album. I do think that, you know, some of the sameness could be, you know, a little bit more exciting at times, or a bit more engaging than it is. But overall, I still think it's a really solid album, this one. And I'm impressed because I think a lot of the counterparts or a lot of the peers at the moment that might be doing this kind of music, there is a dog barking right now. I'm trying to speak my mind. When you're looking at, you know, maybe a Boy Genius or those kinds of artists, Mitski, I don't necessarily find myself fully engaged the whole way through. And I think the Japanese House might have found a nice balance here of making it a little bit more engaging and a little bit more prettier than some of those artists. And that's not to attack those ones, because there's quite a lot of indie singer-songwriters out there at the moment that I feel this way about. They were just some examples there. But I think the Japanese House might be one to watch now, because I think she might be doing it a little bit better than some of these others out there, you know, you sneakily. So that's a 7 out of 10 from me. Please check this album out if you haven't already. It wasn't one I was planning on reviewing, but actually I thought, you know what, I should give it a go. I should put it out there just in case people weren't paying attention, because I think, you know, it's not necessarily a name that's hugely recognizable, but if you're clicking this video, you might be like interested, and now you've got a recommendation. If you have already heard it though, please tell me your thoughts in the comments. Tell me what I should review next. If there's anything else that you'd like me to talk about. Do have a good day. If you haven't subscribed already, please do. Goodbye. Bye.